it's Nora, and today I'm filming a video all about scrap yarn blankets. I have a lot of information to share because I've knit and I'm currently knitting several scrap yarn blankets. So I just thought I would talk all about them and maybe inspire people to make their own. Yeah, so I have a few finished ones that I'm going to show you. Most of them are knit, but I have 2 crochet ones, so if you also crochet, I have something for you. I'm really excited to talk about it. I think the best way to go about this is because I have so many blankets and so many different ones is to just show you them individually and talk about like what's different about them and the different attributes that they have. But I think before that I should just talk about like collecting scrap yarn. So all of these blankets, the yarn is all fingering weight yarn, and they're left over from other projects for the most part. I think usually the idea with scrap yarn blankets is they're usually designed for fingering weight yarn with the assumption that you have like 40 to 60 grams of yarn left after you knit socks. Like some people call these like sock yarn scrap blankets. But mine are just from all different projects that I've knit, socks and not socks. And I also years ago used to do a lot of mini skein swaps that were organized on Ravelry. I'm not really sure if people do that anymore, but I was really into meeting people on Ravelry and swapping like 5 to 10 grams of yarn. Like it would be like, I'll send you 6 mini skeins, you send me back 6 mini skeins, and people would put like tea bags in there and like cute little treats. That was fun. So that's how I got some yarn. And then I also have bought like several mini skeins, which is always a fun way to try new yarn. Like I have a Legacy Fiber Arts mini skeins in there, junk yarn mini skeins, and then a lot of Hedgehog Fibers and Madeline Tosh Unicorn Tails, which is just nice to try out some new yarns. I also have like a Scooby-Doo themed mini skein set in there, which is kind of cool because I probably wouldn't have purchased a full skein. No matter, I do love Scooby-Doo. I probably wouldn't have purchased a full skein of any of these yarns, but it's fun to have like the mini skein set is fun. So yeah, that's how I've gotten yarn. I also will say that this definitely like motivated some purchases. So like I would, if I was like picking between 2 sweaters that I want to knit and one is in DK weight yarn and one is in fingering weight yarn, it is more exciting and cost effective for me to knit a fingering weight yarn sweater because I know eventually I'm going to use every single gram of that yarn in scrap yarn blankets, when if I was knitting a like DK weight sweater, I probably have scraps from like 4 years ago of DK things that I've knit that I just don't really have uses for the extra yarn. So that definitely motivated some purchases of like, okay, I'm going to spend a little bit more money on this sweater, but I'm going to definitely use every single gram of yarn. And I think that is a beauty of scrap yarn blankets, is that you're always going to have a little memory left over from special projects and special yarn that you bought. And like the yarn that we buy can sometimes be very expensive, and it's nice to know that you're going to use a lot of it. So I always like scrap yarn blankets to memorialize all of the beautiful yarn that I have knit with throughout my life. So I think that's all I have to say about just collecting yarn. Just because these are going to be very large blankets, I'm not going to be able to show you them just sitting on my couch. I'm going to put photos and videos, if I remember, and the ones that I have taken photos of, I'm going to put photos and videos in the video so you'll be able to see. Something also I think is important to note is just like, I know sometimes scrap yarn blankets can be a little intimidating because it's such a long feat that you're taking on. It's a project that's going to take you years, and I just thought maybe it would be helpful to explain my process. That sounds kind of like pretentious, but my process for scrap yarn knitting is that I would just have like a bowl or a basket around my house that when I would finish projects, I would just toss my scraps into it. And then when I had like a pretty, like maybe like a collection of like 10 or more, then I would add them to my blankets. And when I was knitting when I'm working on several blankets at a time, I can just like, I'll have like a few weeks where all I'm knitting on is scrap yarn blankets, and I'm just going from one to another, adding these yarns. I don't know if it's very common that people are knitting multiple scrap yarn blankets at a time, but I found it helpful and like kind of motivating and exciting to be like, in like 2 months I'm gonna have like a whole week where I'm just knitting scrap yarn blankets, and I'm so excited to revisit this yarn again. And having that like bowl of exciting yarn to knit into scrap yarn blankets was always motivating to be able to knit with. So I wasn't just finishing a project and adding yarn, I was collecting them and adding them all at once. This is my Beekeeper's quilt by Tiny Owl Knits. It is the first scrap yarn blanket I ever cast on in November 2015, which was my senior year of high school. So this yarn is the first pair of socks I ever made, and it's not in any other blankets. And I do not have those socks anymore, so that's a good piece of You've Got to Be Knitting Me history. First pair of socks, Rose City Rollers, of course. Yeah, so this is by a pattern by Tiny Owl Knits. I'm sure if you've been on the knitting internet for a while, you've seen this blanket because this really took all of us by storm. I will say I've not seen many finished Beekeeper's quilts. This one's finished. So what it is, they're all these little hexy puffs is what they're called. They're so cute. Little hexy puffs, and then you stuff them with polyfill and 3 needle bind off them together, and you have these cute little hexagons that are 3-dimensional, and then you sew them all together, and it's called the Beekeeper's quilt because it looks like honeycomb. In the pattern, they're only sewn together on the corners. I thought that looked really bad. I remember watching back when this pattern was so popular, watching other knitting podcasts being like, and this is my Beekeeper's quilt, and they would lift up and all of the hexy puffs are like hanging on by dear life because they're only sewn together in the corners. So I sewed them all the way together, and I think that like using the physics, it holds it together a lot better. So yeah, so this, I did know limitations on the type of yarn. Other blankets are, we'll talk about that later, but other blankets, like the type of yarn is kind of limited, and I think I would just knit like, see how many I could get out of the scraps I had left, maybe like 5 or 10, and I would sew them as I go. And then I had this big basket that my Nana got me. Is really, if you are a knitter, get as many baskets as you possibly can. My Nana got me this big basket with a lid, and I just for years filled it with hexy puffs, so they weren't all like, so I wanted to have the yarn like spread out throughout the project. It wasn't all the same colors together, so I would sew them together as I go, and then also have extras in that beautiful basket. So I started this blanket November 2015, and I finished May 2021. So that's like 6 years. Pretty average scrap yarn blanket life, I guess. It's not like full sized. I used to have a love seat, and I had this on the back of it, and it fit over it perfectly. It's about like a lap blanket size, and honestly you don't want it to be any bigger because it's pretty heavy. Yeah, like a nice lap blanket. It's a really unique texture to have on you because it's pretty heavy, and it's a really nice blanket. Right now it's not out. I have a cedar chest right here, and right now it's at the bottom of the cedar chest because I don't have, as you'll see throughout this video, I have a lot of blankets and I don't know how to display all of them. So this blanket hasn't seen the light of day in a little bit, but it's so beautiful, and I can't wait till I have a place that I can put it. Also, I did, in that basket, I had this little tip. These are the kind of things that are in a You've Got to Be Knitting Me video. A good tip. I had a, what are those called? Dryer sheet in the basket, and so this still smells really good. I recommend doing that because, you know, sometimes our wool gets a little stinky. Yeah, so that is the Beekeeper's quilt, a good option for scrap yarn knitting. Let's move on to the next one. This next blanket I just finished. That is what inspired me to make this video. This is the Cozy Memories blanket. There are a million different patterns and blog posts and videos about Cozy Memories blanket. It's just a mitered square. Here it is. It's just a mitered square pattern. I'll show you one individually. Just a square. But the pattern I used was Coziest Memory by Kemper Wray. It's on Ravelry, it's free. She was the yarn dyer behind Junk Yarn, but I don't think Junk Yarn exists anymore. But so yeah, this blanket I started in December 2015, so I was making my Beekeeper's quilt for a month and was like, I cannot get enough of this scrap yarn blanket. I'm gonna make another one. So, and I just finished 2 weeks ago. So this has been on the needles for 9.5 years, and it is every single fingering weight project that I've knit since December 2015 is in this blanket. So this is like cozy memories. The memories run deep. So this particular blanket is 15 by 25, so that's 375 squares. It's about, like, it would cover a twin bed well, and also is a nice couch throw blanket, and it's a nice, like, light fabric. Yeah, so for this one, in the Beekeeper's quilt, the yarn is in there maybe like 5 to 10 times. This blanket, I only put every single yarn in there once, so it's 375 unique yarns. And again, scrap yarns, mini skein swaps, projects I knit for other people, so I can look at this and be like, oh, I knit those socks for my friend Owen. This Reggie yarn is like I think this colorway is so beautiful, and my friend Owen, I knit a pair of socks with that. Let's see other people in here. I don't know if I can find anyone really quickly. Here's a Scooby-Doo yarn, Daphne. And this was the first sweater I ever made. It was the Perfect Crop Top. That was another classic, like 2016 pattern, the Perfect Crop Top. I knit this Koi Goo yarn. That sweater did get eaten by moths, which is like, knock on wood, the only thing I've ever had eaten by moths. I don't know how they just came into that sweater, ate it, and then left. Who knows? That was a very long time ago. So that's pretty much all I have to say about the Cozy Memories blanket. Just finally, I finished it off with an I-cord edging. I think that was a really nice way to finish it off. And I also got to like look, as I was picking up the stitches, I got to like look at and appreciate every yarn that was around the edge. This was in size 2 needles, I didn't say that. Size 2 needles, I think is pretty much every blanket I've knit is on size 2 needles, I'm pretty sure. But yeah, so I knit an I-cord edging to finish it off. And yeah, I think that's all I have to say. Okay, the next blanket I have to talk about is this one. It's a granny straight blanket. It's crocheted. This one's also finished. We're moving from finished blankets to works in progress. And I started this one June 2019. And I finished it September 2023. I finished it while like binging the show Barry. And even though I've knit or crocheted this for years, it's just like every time I like take it out, especially the border, I just like think of Barry so much. I love that show. Yeah. So this is crocheted. I don't remember the exact YouTube video I watched. I am not as skilled in crochet as I am in knitting by like a lot, and I really only can crochet things if I'm following along a YouTube video, but I'm not sure exactly what YouTube video I was following, so I'm just going to link one that is helpful. And I wrote down that I chained 302 stitches to start, so it's about, again, like a little over a twin size bed, like throw blanket size, and I started with 302 chain stitches. Okay, this is where we're going to start to talk about a little bit of drama. And this is going to be an open dialogue because I'm also confused. So what inspired me specifically to make this blanket is that when I was knitting the other two, the Beekeeper's quilt and the Cozy Memories blanket, especially if I was knitting from a mini skein or from a mini skein swap, I would always end and I would still have like this much yarn left. And I'm like, what am I going to do with that yarn? Like, I'm not going to throw it out, but I can't really use it for anything. So let's tie all those tiny balls of yarn together and make one big ball of yarn and crochet a beautiful blanket together. That's what I did. But let's talk about the magic knot because it's going to come up several times throughout this video. this was made with a magic knot, and I did not have any problems while I was making it. I like maybe a handful of times in all of the yarn that like in the years that I was making this, a knot would come undone while I was working. I would just tie the knot up again, have a great time, nothing's wrong. And now that it's finished and it's been like a year, I am just seeing the knots open. And that originally, like when I've done projects in the past that were magic knot, and I would really beat myself up when they would come undone because I was like, I'm just not following the video close enough. And then I would take out my scrap yarn and I would be like watching the video like, okay, do this and then cross it over and blah. And like every time I would do that, and then every time the knots would come undone, and I would get really upset with myself that I wasn't following the directions close enough. I am going to link the video that I'm talking about, and maybe you will have better luck. But I just feel like magic knot does not work. And as I said, throughout this project, as I was making it, it was fine and the knots were not coming undone. But as the blanket is living and breathing, and we picked wool to be our fiber of life because it can absorb things, and it's so flexible, and so like it holds its shape. And like I think that's one of the reasons that the magic knot sometimes doesn't work, because the fibers are naturally loosening. And as I said, I used to really be upset with myself that I wasn't doing it right, and now I think that like sometimes the yarn just does not want to be tied together. So yeah, I am gonna link that video, and you can use a magic knot if you want. And I don't know how I would have made this blanket without a magic knot, but it just does make me sad that there are places that it is falling apart. That's the magic knot of it all. We'll talk about it for other projects as well. And if other people are like, I use the magic knot for all of my scrap yarn projects, and this is a video that works better, or this is a technique that works better, I would love to hear, because I always see like projects that are made with scrap yarns and they are beautiful magic knots. And there's like one person in particular that always comes up on my explore page, and I cannot follow her because I cannot bear to be inspired, because I know that if I make a magic knot ball, it's gonna come undone. So for this, I would really like advice. But I'll continue to talk about this blanket. I really love it, and it's really beautiful, and there's probably millions of knots in this blanket, and probably like 10 of them have come undone. So in the grand scheme of things, not that bad. So again, like the other blankets, I always get so sweaty when I film these videos. Like the other blankets, there was no limits to what type of yarn was in this. It was just anything that had a tiny ball, and I would just collect them. And then when I would be like, I bet that's around 100 grams, I would tie them together and cake it up, crochet, have a great time, watch Wray. And then my mom got me this special yarn at Cape Cod Fiber Festival. And I thought I was going to be able to do a few more rounds, but I only got 3 around before I ran out of yarn. I always think it's nice to have a special skein of yarn for your border, because you work so hard on the blanket that you want a special thing to just tie it all together. This blanket is crocheted, and it's crocheted with, okay, my last video when I was editing it, I was like, I need to stop lunging off the camera as much, so there was another lunge. This crochet hook is what I crocheted it with. It is a 3.25 millimeter crochet hook, and I just want to show you that, look at how much it got worn down. And this, at the time, like, this was the only blanket I was working on it, and I wore it down with my fingers so much. So I think that's so beautiful, that like that repetition, motion, erosion. Like I did this with my hands while making something. I think it's so beautiful. This crochet hook I used. Yeah, I'm just looking at a knot that came undone right there. And another one. So this wasn't this section of the video was maybe not that inspirational, but maybe somebody will come into the comments and save me. I would love that. So yeah, this is the granny straight blanket. All right, the next pattern I did make up, and it is really simple. It's just garter stitch, so anyone can do this. There we go. This is just a little tiny lap blanket. I wanted something to be on my bed that would just covers my lap and is kind of lightweight. And this is another thing I did make with matching knot. And all the knots are coming undone, but doesn't matter because this is 4 strands of yarn held together. So this blanket, the construction is 2 of this orange fingering weight yarn that I bought to be the main color of this project, and then 1 mohair that's like light pink, and then a few balls that were another tiny balls of yarn magic knotted together, and it doesn't really matter that the knots are coming undone because there's so many other things holding it together, and the mohair like sticks the yarn together. These are knit on size 10 needles, or this was knit on size 10 needles, and it's 150 stitches across. And then I did a crochet scallop edge, just to finish it all together. This blanket, I really like the weight and the way it feels, and the variegation of the scrap yarn. I don't like the orange, and I think if I were to make this again, I would have not, or I wish I didn't pick the orange, but it's okay. I just think it clashes against a lot of the colors. But this also knit up really quick, so if you are intimidated by the length of time that you have to commit to these other blankets, this I probably maybe was like 200 gram balls of scrap yarn that I made, and then the other orange yarn, so it knit up super quick. Yeah, so if you can generate enough little scraps to do it all in one sitting, this would be a good option if you're just trying to get rid of some yarn. Yeah, it's really cute, and like I like how soft it is. I like the weight. It's nice to just have a little blanket to put on your lap. Yeah, so this is just my cute little garter stitch blanket. Okay, this is my last finished blanket. This is a log cabin blanket. I'll show you. And this is made with all solid color yarn. This was the first limitation I gave to my scrap yarn blanket knitting. I started this when I was living in Ireland, and I didn't have access to my entire yarn collection when I was living there, and it was also when I was getting my master's degree, so I was looking for cheap projects I did not have to purchase yarn for, so scrap yarn knitting was perfect for that. And when I was over there, I just noticed that I had a lot more solid color yarn, so I thought I would cast that on. This pattern is just, I don't even think, I mean, there's a million log cabin blankets that have existed forever in every medium, quilting, crochet, everything. But I think this was just a blog post. I don't even think it's on Ravelry, but I'll link it in the description. Mine just does have like a little bit of a bubbling issue at the beginning because I completely misread the pattern and for some reason thought that the stitch number had to be divisible by 9, which is like kind of hard math to do and like doesn't make any sense. So a little bit of a tension issue here, but that's okay. Especially because it's a blanket and it's never really like laying perfectly flat. It's like a throw blanket. I will say that like the scrappiness of this did unfortunately have to change because the end stripes are like very long, and like one okay, so for example, this yarn, I knit a sweater vest that was all Jameson Spindrift, and those are sold in 25 gram balls, and so I like my scraps, I would have like maybe like a full skein left, so it wasn't really a scrap, it was a full skein of yarn, but it was only 25 grams, and it would this stripe like took up the whole 25 grams. So I do think at least 2 of these yarns I did buy like exclusively to knit into this blanket because I just wanted it to be a little bit bigger. So if you do start one of these, I will say that like it's all fun and games until we get about here, and then we have like 400 stitches on the needle. It is very beautiful, and I did just knit a log cabin sweater that I just based off of this pattern. It's a good skill to have, and also how I said that I have a lot of scraps of other weight yarn that I don't really know what to do with. I would like to make a log cabin blanket, not a perfectly square one, so I think I'll like add stripes. So how this is like you knit a stripe across, and then you turn, and then you pick up the stitches and knit a stripe across, and then you turn, and then you knit across. This probably isn't a really good explanation, but like you're always going in a little square, and I think I would like to knit a maybe like DK weight one with scraps that I'm just kind of knitting like stripe, 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 big stripe across, another big stripe across, big stripe, like, so it's more of a rectangle and not as uniform. So that's planned sometime in the future. Yeah, I didn't do any border for this. I just kind of finished it off with just bind off. And I really like it. It's a little bit bigger than a lap blanket, a good throw size, and I just have it on the corner of my couch, and I love it. So that's log cabin blanket number 1. If you're like, oh no, I don't want to have 300 stitches, how am I supposed to do 25 grams of scraps? What the heck? I don't want to be buying my own yarn for the scrap yarn blanket. That's such a waste. That's not even scrap yarn. Well, I have a solution for you. I'm knitting a tiny log cabin blanket. So this is 13 little yarn, 13 different colors in every square. This is going to take me forever to finish because of that. Right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is what I just knit. This has, if you have watched my last Quilt podcast, you probably recognize all the yarn from this because this is my most recent one that I just finished. So what did I say? I just have 7. And I think I'm gonna do, I mean, I'm not gonna finish this for years and years and years, but I think I'm gonna do that they're connected with like a garter stitch, like a solid garter stitch strip in between. I think will really look really nice. I'm gonna just have to figure out how to do that, but I'm not planning on finishing this anytime soon. So this is really just the same construction, but I started with a smaller square in the middle and did less rows for the stripe. And this is a better option that you're only using like max. How big is the biggest stripe? This one, like 2 grams of yarn. So this is a good option if you don't want to be knitting big stripes like that, but you still want to be knitting a log cabin blanket. We're just gonna have to figure out how to attach them together. But I do think this is super cute, and I get really excited to make this whenever this is up next on my project. I can't wait to knit one of those little squares. They're so cute. And I love the, like, picking out the color combinations and stuff. Let me show you which one's my favorite. I love this pink one. This Knit Picks color Lady Slipper. They have it in so many different lines of their yarn, and I think it's so pretty. Let's see what else. This pink one's also pretty. I love pink. Yeah, I'm really excited to continue to work on this. I think it's really pretty and a good option if you want to make a log cabin blanket. That's not a big project to take on like that one. Yeah, and this is all different types of yarn. I'm doing variegated, and the only thing is I did kind of start limiting myself to not really putting like self-striping yarn in, just because sometimes I do think that looks a little weird, or you're only getting like 1 or 2 stripes, so it's not a very good representation of the yarn. That's in like I do have that in my Cozy Memories blanket and stuff, but just the last couple blankets I've been making, I haven't been putting self-striping yarn in. Also, I don't really like buy that much self-striping yarn, so like if there was just like 1 or 2 in a project, it would look kind of weird. So that's the only limitation I've been putting on my blankets for right now. So yeah, that's the log cabin, mini log cabin blanket. Okay, the next blanket I have to show you is the Sweet Shop blanket by Laura Penrose. Let's see what direction it's supposed to be in. Okay. Yeah, this is the Sweet Shop blanket. It's super cute. This is definitely a really popular pattern right now. A lot of people are making it. And that's always fun to be like on Instagram and seeing a lot of people making the same project as you. So for mine, I am knitting every square and every half of a square. All of them are scraps, and they're all different. And this is gonna be like kind of replace my Cozy Memories blanket, as like every scrap yarn is gonna go into this blanket. So yeah. Oh, but some people knit this blanket, and like half of it is a uniform color that they're using for every block, and then 1 half is a scrap. I think that looks really nice too. Like maybe like a white here and then a scrap, white here, scrap. I think that looks really nice. And I also knit this blanket as a baby blanket, and I bought I like bought the like none of it was scrap yarn. I bought like 4 colors and I just made this pattern into a baby blanket, and that looked really nice too. They're made by Short Rows, which is kind of interesting. You pick up the stitches and then you knit, like you start here and knit out, which is fun, and it's fun to pick all the colors and which ones are going to go together. Like I really like this contrast, and then like these having the 2 variegateds together and having this like marled yarn and the variegated yarn I think looks really nice. And I like following along with other people's projects. And also this is designer, like I just picked this Sweet Shop one where all of them are going in the same direction, but I believe that she does have this pattern where it looks like a star quilt motif. So I think she has like several different fingering weight patterns that are meant, or a lot of people use for scrap yarn blankets. So if you want to look around at her designs, yeah, I really like this one. Well, I really like all my scrap yarn blankets. That's not really an interesting thing to say in this video. I love scrap yarn knitting. But I'm going to do, I think, a mohair I-cord when I finish, because I do have quite a lot of mohair scraps, and I think it'll look really beautiful if I did like 3 like scraps of mohair that are changing throughout. I think that'll look really beautiful. So that's the plan for this. We'll see how that goes. I'm also not going to finish this for a while, obviously. But yeah, this is a very exciting project to make. And yes, here is the Sweet Shop blanket. All right, we have 2 more blankets. This one's just a little baby one. It's a mini granny square blanket. The pattern is just a YouTube video by MSC Knits, or MSC Makes. She's a crocheter, not knitting. Well, I don't know if she knits, but she mostly crochets. I recommend following her Instagram because she has a lot of really beautiful blankets that she's making, and I'm sure she has YouTube. If she has a YouTube tutorial for this one, she probably has them for a lot of her blankets. And also it's very nice that you can join as you go, and like the join is really beautiful. It makes this like twisty, I think looks so nice. It's such a nice finishing edge. And so this I'm obviously alternating between this. This is called Neon Red from Hedgehog, not Hedgehog Fibers. I love Hedgehog Fibers, from Cascade Heritage Neon Red. And I'm alternating between scrap yarn and the red scrap yarn, the red. Is that one in the wrong direction? No. Yeah, I think this is super cute. It's nice that you can join as you go. The YouTube video is really easy to follow along, and they literally take maybe like 2 seconds to crochet, so you can really just kind of whip them up. Like I added maybe 10 scrap yarns, so a total of 20 squares the other day, and I think it took me like half an hour. So this is super quick, especially if you're a little bit proficient in crochet. This is a really quick pattern. And again, it is going to take quite a while because I'm only doing 1 of each scrap yarn, but I really look forward to adding to it every time I add to it. And also I'm going to do the same as I did with the garter stitch blanket. I'm going to do a scallop crochet edge. I'll put a video for that as well, because I think that's a really nice way to finish off your blankets. I did it for this intarsia blanket as well, if you can see. I don't know if you can see this far, but it has like scallop edge again. So I'll put a link to that. Yeah, so this is a little mini crochet granny square blanket. I think it would also be really beautiful to do, like I like how this one's checkerboard, but I think it would be really beautiful to do like every single one be a scrap. It would just take a long time because that's a lot of scraps to make. But yeah, I really like adding to this blanket. I just started this over the summer. I'm always craving blanket knitting in the summer because it's quick and fun, but also then you have big blankets sitting on your lap and it's kind of hot. But yeah, I started this over the summer and I love working on it every couple months, and it's super cute, like every blanket. Finally, the last blanket I have to show you is this jelly roll blanket. It's made out of all German self-patterning sock yarn, mostly opal with some regia in it as well. I was finding that when I was knitting a pair of socks, I would finish the pair of socks, add them to whatever scrap projects I was adding them to, and I would still have like 20 grams left, and I didn't really like know what to do with just the 20 grams of this like very unique looking yarn. So I wanted to cast on a blanket that was all scrap yarn, or all of this type of yarn. And at the time, or I think they might still have some on the needles, the Legacy Fiber Art podcast hosts, they were both knitting so many jelly roll blankets. They were knitting a lot of DK weight ones. And I think they sell DK weight mini skeins because of that. And I really liked their blanket, and I was like, maybe I'll make a jelly roll blanket. And so I was looking at the project page on Ravelry, and somebody did it with all of the German self-patterning yarn, and I was like, that's such a good idea. So I cast one on myself, and guess how the yarn is attached? Yes, the magic knot. But I think that's okay, especially because like this type of yarn is so like rugged and like rough that the yarn like stays together pretty well. I haven't had any issues with these knots coming undone, and honestly I can't, oh, there's a knot. It does look a little loose. Just goes to show you. But yeah, I probably will continue to do that throughout this project. That's okay. But the basic construction is you knit like one strip, and then you go to cast on however many, I think mine's like 30 stitches, you go on to cast however many, cast that on again, and then you're just picking up every row you're knitting, you're picking up a stitch, and it's modular knitting. It's super easy, and if you're a little intimidated by that, this is a good project to practice on because it's pretty simple. And the pattern, it's designed to have the this edging on the front. Yeah, so I think this is 10 grams each of the yarn, so you get to see like a full pattern repeat, and I think each color's in here like twice because I always have 20 grams left. And just every time I have like 10 balls of yarn, I'll tie them together and add them to this. It's not super big. I guess as I was like getting ready to film this video, I was like, maybe I wish I knew that one a little bit bigger, but the plan is, because this yarn is like pretty tough, you know how like this type of sock yarn is a little rougher, I thought this would be a good like car blanket slash like beach blanket because it's a little bit more rugged and like kind of a little ugly in a beautiful way. So that's the plan for this, but it's also going to take a really long time. Honestly, I don't know if I even have any of this type of yarn in my stash right now. But it's always a good gift. Like every time I'm like, I don't know what to make this person, or I don't know what to give this person for a gift, I always knit a pair of socks, because if they're the type of person who deserves a pair of socks, I think that's a good gift. So I will have more of these socks on the needles and eventually generate more scraps. And that's the beauty of scrap yarn knitting. It comes into your life, it leaves, it comes back. Beautiful. So I think that's all I have to say about scrap yarn blankets. I hope this was a comprehensive overview. If you have any questions, please comment. If you're inspired to make any of these, please comment. I love scrap blanket knitting. I think it's a really good way to memorialize all of your yarn, and also get the most of your money, because knitting is very expensive. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will be back with another knitting podcast soon. And until then, happy knitting, and I'll see you later.